What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, undefeated, two-division world champion, superstar boxer, Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, who was the WBO 154-pound junior middleweight world champion, and now he's the WBO middleweight 160-pound limit world champion, superstar boxer, undefeated. He calls out undefeated, unified, WBC, IBF, welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Errol the True Spence Jr. He cited that he saw Errol Spence Jr. took to social media and criticized the fact that his level of opponent, his opponent selection, he was not approval of his opponent selection. So Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, today he's doing an interview, and he lets Errol Spence Jr. know, if you don't like my level of opponent, for one, you could tell your friends, undefeated, two-division world champion, currently the WBC reigning middleweight world champion, Jamal Charlo, and unified junior middleweight world champion, superstar boxer, Jamel Charlo, identical twins. He says you could tell the Jamel and Jamal Charlo, he used other words, and he says you could tell them to fight me, or better yet, if you don't like my level of opponent selection, why don't you do something about it, and why don't you fight me? This is what Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade had to say. He was discussing his lack of being able to secure a major fight, a big fight. He has all the talent in the world. He has all the skill set in the world, but he can't land that big fight. He went as far as to say he could beat Anthony Joshua. He said, I could beat Andy Ruiz. I know I could beat them. I have the skill set. I should be on the pound-for-pound list. When asked about the pound-for-pound list, the pound-for-pound list was brought up, and they said you should be on the pound-for-pound list if we go by your skill set. But to go by your level of opponent, the lack there of big fights, we can't put you on there. So he says, well, my skill set would allow me to be on any list because I could beat anybody all the way up to heavyweight. That's when he said that he could beat Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz Jr., right? Then he goes on to say that, he wants Errol Spence Jr. If Errol Spence Jr. don't like the level of opponents he's selecting, then do something about it. You a big fight, then won't you make it happen between me and you? I'm going to play a little clip of Demetrius Andrade and what he had to say. Let's just listen to the little clip of Demetrius Andrade, what he had to say regarding this, this topic and responding to Errol Spence. Let's just listen to what he had to say.
My boy Errol Spence has something to say about, the better opponents. So why don't you, tell your twin sisters over there to step up? Or you can step up yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, tell them to make it happen.
Yeah. So he said, tell Errol Spence. He said, I know my boy Errol Spence has something to say about the level of opponents and the opponent selection. He said, why don't you tell the Queen sisters to step up, referring to Jamel and Jamal Charlo, or better yet, you could step up, and won't you tell them to make the fight happen?
The better opponents, so why don't you, tell your twin sisters over there to step up? Or you can step up yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, tell them to make it happen. Yeah.
So, he said more, but I'm not going to play the entire clip of the interview. You can see this on AB Boxing News. Shout out to AB Boxing News. He states that, Errol Spence, all Errol Spence got to do is tell them to make it happen. And once he tells them to make it happen, this is a fight that could go down. That would be a very, very interesting fight, to say the least, because they both southpaws. They both very, very technical. Demetrius Andrade obviously is bigger than Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. is about 5'9". Demetrius Andrade is 6 feet tall. So Demetrius Andrade is a pretty big guy. Thus the reason why he campaigns at middleweight, 160, and was campaigning at 154. He's very, very close friends with two-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Sean Porter, who we know Errol Spence defeated in his last fight to become unified in the unification bout. And Sean Porter was the WBC belt holder, and Errol Spence defeated Sean Porter and picked up that WBC strap. Demetrius Andrade, obviously, there's a built-in rivalry because Sean Porter and Errol Spence have a rivalry, and he's nearly best friends with Sean Porter. So Demetrius Andrade, he's stating that, make that fight happen. He has a significant size advantage over Errol Spence Jr. He's just naturally the bigger guy. And 9 times out of 10, when you put, big guys in the ring with great big men in the ring with great little men, great big men usually win. In this case, Errol Spence is exceptional. Errol Spence is very technical. Errol Spence has power. Errol Spence is very disciplined in his approach, in the ring. So it'll be a very difficult fight. It's a 50-50 fight because Demetrius Andrade may just be the most skillful boxer in all of boxing, right? Like you said, he has the size and the versatility to go up. Now, I don't know if he could go up to heavyweight and beat Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz, but can he actually go up to heavyweight and beat some heavyweights? Possibly, right? Like Roy Jones did, with the right choice of opponent. His skill set, he could outpoint a heavyweight, possibly. We haven't seen Demetrius Andrade in the ring with that level of opponent. He went on to talk about how everything fell through with him and Billy Joe Saunders. And one major stable point here that I noticed is that he said they offered Jamal Charlo $4 million. Now, $4 million is a long way off from the $7 million that Eddie Hearn said that they offered Jamal Charlo to showcase his talents on DAZN or on Showtime against Demetrius Andrade. That's $3 million off. That's a $3 million disconnect. Maybe Demetrius Andrade made a mistake. Maybe he was referring to another situation because he did say he don't like to speak on his opponent's revenue or any other fighters. He just don't like to count their pockets, and that's normal. Most real men don't like to count other men's pockets, right? You're just worrying about your own revenue, your own way of feeding your family, and what you have in the bank. So I respect that from Demetrius Andrade. So maybe there was a disconnect, maybe there was a mistake, but we know his promoter, Matchroom CEO and promoter Eddie Hearn, stated that he offered Jamal Charlo $7 million, and now Demetrius Andrade is saying $4 million. So maybe $4 million was Billy Joe Saunders was going to get. I don't know, but that seems to be a disconnect there. Jamal Charlo did say they never even made the offer. They never offered him anything. So I don't know what's going on there, but there's a serious disconnect. When I talked to Ronnie Shields, trainer of Jamal Charlo, he said $7 million is a major offer, and that's hard to turn down. And now Demetrius Andrade is saying they offered him $4 million. So Eddie Hearn stated that they offered him $7 million. So there's a serious disconnect there. As far as he made mention, he talked about Eddie Hearn, his promoter, not getting him these big fights. He said he expected Eddie Hearn to get these big fights, although he understands that, it's very difficult because he's a high risk with right now seemingly a low reward because he's not the major attraction because he's never had these big fights. Now, one thing I can say is Demetrius Andrade was signed to fight Jamal Charlo at 54, and Demetrius Andrade pulled out the fight because he cited that he didn't like the wording in the contract and how much money he was getting. That fight was already signed, sealed, and ready to be delivered. They were just getting ready to start training camp if they already didn't start training camp. And Demetrius Andrade pulled out that fight as he was promised to be able to make more money from, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Rock Nation. They stepped in and said that they could get him more money. He pulled out the fight. So you was already scheduled to face Jamal Charlo. So not facing Jamal Charlo, that was a major fight for Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade. It's very difficult for fighters to trust and want to do business with Demetrius Andrade after that because at any point in time, I'm sure these fighters feel like, and promoters, the rival promoters feel like this guy could pull out at any given time and I have to find a replacement opponent for a major fight. Now, he stated that, Billy Joe Saunders, obviously, we all know he tested positive for a banned substance. They were supposed to have their fight in the Boston Celtics in the Boston Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, close to his home. It was a backyard fight for Demetrius Andrade, homecoming fight. Billy Joe Saunders was coming to the States and fighting. This is a massive fight. I personally was there covering that fight. And obviously, Billy Joe Saunders was pulled out the fight. He had to have a replacement opponent. It was for the WBO title. He became the 160-pound WBO champion. With that said, as far as him and Errol Spence Jr. goes, I don't see that fight happening. I don't see that fight coming to fruition. Just too much of a size difference. like I said, he has a distinct size advantage over Errol Spence. So I just can't see that fight coming to fruition. Demetrius Andrade, in my opinion, needs to assert himself more because he don't seem to have the backing from his promoter. He says he don't like how Eddie Hearn, is not being able to secure him these major mega fights. Demetrius Andrade is getting older, running out of major time. He needs to do something quick, fast, and in a hurry. And fights like Gennady Triple G Golovkin, former unified middleweight reigning world champion superstar boxer, now is a world champion once again. He holds the IBF, and that's a unification bout for Demetrius Andrade, and yet Eddie Hearn can't make that fight. I mean, you got to be able to pay Gennady Golovkin the money he's so looking for to make that fight happen. It's just like Gennady Golovkin will be willing to fight Canelo Alvarez because Canelo Alvarez represents a dollar sign. So if you come with the right amount of money, I'm sure Eddie Hearn could get a fight done with Gennady Golovkin if you have the right amount of money. And Eddie Hearn is going to have to dig deep in that bag to be able to pay Gennady Golovkin the money it needs to be paid. That's a unification bout. That's a breakout fight for Demetrius Andrade. I think that he will outclass Gennady Triple G Golovkin. That's a fight the whole world will be paying attention to. You will get the attention of the mainstream media, the ESPNs, because Gennady Golovkin is dear to their heart. So you would get the attention of mainstream media, quote unquote. You would get the attention of the boxing world. You outclass and dominate Gennady Triple G Golovkin and become unified. You would then be the WBO, IBF middleweight world champion. That makes the fight with yourself and Jamal Charlo that much bigger. This is a fight that needs to happen. The WBA title, I believe, is I don't even know who the WBA middleweight world champion is currently. But this is a fight that Demetrius Andrade needs to, secure. Gennady Golovkin, that's the meal ticket. That's his breakout fight. That would be his fight announcement to the mainstream media. The ESPNs will lock into this fight. So this is a fight that needs to come to fruition. Demetrius Andrade needs to make some serious moves and make some serious moves fast because he's running out of time. He's seriously running out of time. And now he's going to fight an opponent. He said that if he can't get the names, he looks at the record. He's looking at the record of the guy of his next opponent at 168, and he's saying that, the guy's like 24-0 or something like that. So I looked at his record and his resume, and I'm saying to myself, this is a fight that I need to have. This is a fight that needs to come to fruition. Now, to his defense, he did get in the ring with Gennady Triple G Golovkin after he should have been, a loss to Sergey Derevyanchenko, but he got the victory. He got the nod because they're looking to place other big fights. They're looking to make other big fights. So with that said, Canelo Alvarez is the WBA middleweight world champion. So he's not going to get that fight. Murata he could get the Murata fight. Canelo Alvarez is the WBA super world champion, right? So Murata. So he needs to get the fight with Murata. He needs to push for that fight. See if he can land Murata, right? That's a fight that's very winnable. So let's say Demetrius Andrade, he needs to reroute his career, right? He needs to rethink it, reroute it, and come up with a serious game plan. My game plan would be to make your presence felt with Gennady Triple G Golovkin, offer him a major bag, offer him money that he can't refuse because that's going to pay off in the future. You're going to get your return for your investment if you Eddie Hearn in the future. He's going to beat Gennady Golovkin. He's going to become unified. Then you go and push for a fight against Murata, become the WBA. Now he's going to beat Murata, in my opinion. Now you become the WBA, WBO, and IBF champion. You unified. Now you make the fight with Jamal Charlo nearly impossible for Jamal Charlo to turn down. You understand? Because now it's for undisputed at middleweight. That speaks volumes. This is the route that he needs to go. He needs to reroute his thinking and his career. And these are he needs to tell Eddie Hearn that he needs to make this fight with Gennady Golovkin by any means, by any cost, even if it calls for him to take a major pay cut. But let's see what happens. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Find me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.